Welcome back, Mighty Mighty Souls. I'm Stephen Koss. We're getting into Chapter 8 of Thought Outlines the Vision, Emotion Colors It In. Letting go. Time doesn't heal emotional pain. You have to learn how to let go. But oftentimes we're told the opposite. My whole life, time heals all wounds. And why are we always told that? And I guess most would argue that given enough time, that anger won't be on your top mind awareness, sadness, whatever it may be. But that doesn't mean it's disappeared. It's still residing in the body. And this is something that I picked up in yoga class, where a peer is explaining to me, I'm like, what do you mean you hold it on? She's like, you hold trauma in your body. And I didn't get that until she brought it to my attention. So if you're holding this trauma, it's like it's blocking your organs, your muscles, your blood flow, your cellular development, your protein synthesis. And instead of confronting it, we cope. We cope instead of understanding, accepting and surrendering to it. We fight against the current. So how does one actually let go? I love the last paragraph. I'll just read it real quick. It's a terrific deal that this process can be reversed and healing can be exponentially increased. All it requires is a mind, heart, and soul coherent connection with direction. In essence, to let go depends on where one chooses to live. Residing in thankfulness results in more manifestation in the physical, which is what the ego seeks prior to the new direction, because the vibration didn't mirror your true desires. This tipping point is triggered when an individual knows with certainty in their head, heart, and true essence that you can't lose what you haven't lost. So I'll explain that. The world population right now, almost 8 billion. That's 8 billion traumas out there. And as my one buddy said, shout out Chris, after 35 years old, everybody got something. And for me, my personal experience, when I took care of my father as a caregiver, there was a huge trauma. I didn't particularly like this individual. He didn't like me. He had brain cancer. He was seizuring all the time. So when it finally ended, my aunt, who's a lawyer, smart as a whip, she's like, Steven, you should go talk to a buddy of mine. He's a therapist, and we're having lunch. And I'm like, why do I need to do that? I'm fine. I'm going to college. I'm staying young. She's like, you just went through some real hardship, like something that was significantly emotionally hard to deal with. So I'm like, all right, I'll go talk to the guy. Better in agreement. So I confront this guy, and I have a red personality, and I had been to therapy before once, and then with a lot of counselors who I did admire and didn't respect. And I'm confronting this guy, and like, you're going to solve my problems? He's like, hey, buddy, I'm just here to listen. He's like, I'm not going to solve your problems. And as he's probing me, about my father, it really came up that I was unjustly fired from my dream job. I used to be a marketing merchant and promote health clubs all over the country, from Gold's Gyms to Curves. It's a great job. And I'm sitting there, and then I'm getting angry. Like, maybe it's halfway through the session, and I'm talking about this. And he's like, "Oh, you feel that was an injustice?" And I was like, "Yeah." And this had happened years. And I didn't realize that I was still holding on to that stuff. It was just kind of eye-opening, just writing that down right now before the video, that I didn't learn to let go from that, because I was like, "You're wrong, I'm right, end of story." Holding that one here in my back pocket, check the scoreboard, which is the wrong vibration. I don't want to live there. So it's like your mind, in a split second, could be like, "Yep, done with that job, done with that relationship. I'm not living like this anymore. I'm done." But I found out to be that the body's a slower learner. And that's one thing that's been eye-opening to me. So how can you help it out? It's like, from what I've read, we carry most of this trauma in our lower chakras. And maybe that, in our solar, sacrum, and root, maybe that's just as you're getting closer to the earth and you're getting into more of a physical plane. Because up here at the crown, you're at source, you're at God-like particle level. So just a little example of, well, how can we clear that up? We could just do a meditation and just, put our awareness on the yellow, the orange, and the red. And just breathe. Because like I was talking about last time, we take in so many more breaths compared to, how much food and liquid we're taking in, and it hits your bloodstream immediately. And I think that could be a positive step in helping to let go, for sure. But, we're just talking about a job. If we go back over when I was taking care of my dad, and this is decades of bullshit I put up with, that this person didn't give me the love and support and recognition I deserved. I would never do that to somebody else. But looking at it now, it's like I was talking about the last time, he played his role, right? I mean, the first book is about that trauma. And part of me wanted to do it just to get it out again, even though it took me after his death to really let it go, and reliving that stuff didn't help. But now we're on book 5. He played the role he meant to be. But when you're facing this injustice that's like to the 10th power, and your top mind awareness is kill, 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 you got to remind yourself, you're like, whoa. Love's the highest vibration. And that's where I want to choose to reside. And how can I do that? Well, if there's a hole in this thing and you're hurting, you can ask your mind to come down and have a chat. You can get emotional intelligence working with reason and logic. Right? Because, 2 minds are better than one. And that goes back to that heart meditation I was talking about, where you picture yourself on the outside of your heart, and all the people you've ever met are there, and they're high-fiving and hugging you and happy to celebrate the growth that you've all experienced together. You go inside, it's your past selves telling you the same thing. And then you get inside of the chamber, and I always picture just a den, whatever. There's a desk here and a bunch of bookshelves, and then you call down the mind to talk to the heart because you're inside the heart, right? And you're here looking down on all of it, and they're getting together. And now you're starting to experience that coherence. That coherence. Because you're giving off these vibrations of forgiveness, of love, of thankfulness, of am I? I am. And this is proven in, if you have the platform Gaia, Dr. Joe's series, Rewired, you know, when people get into these states on a consistent basis, and it's measured on the EKG, it's a beautiful, coherent field. Synchronized swimming. So after months of practice, I mean at least 60 days, and some are gonna be totally suck. Some are gonna be awesome. But as long as you're putting in the work, it's only 10 to 20 minutes a day. You can start to get on this coherent frequency, and then you won't be living in this one place where you're holding that in the back pocket, and really it's in this blockage in your root chakra, and you're not able to connect or express or receive love, and you're hurting. You want everything to flow. When you turn the faucet on high, you want everything to go right through it, all in rhythm. So like I was reminded of this with the meditation I did today. It was talking about the self, and the mantra was like, who am I, who am I, who am I? And I just like kicked in Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment, for me, where he was talking about sitting on the couch with his brother-in-law. He's like, I couldn't think of anything to talk about with this guy. I'm like, sports, election, weather. And he goes, that's the point where I realized we're both chilling here, and I've got all these things going here in my head. And he goes, I was up here, and I was the one watching it. I was the one hearing them. They weren't me on a certain level. And then today in the meditation, it reminded me, it was like, you aren't the aches in your body. You're the one witnessing the aches. And I hope that kind of makes sense, because once you start to do this, you'll see that the wholeness, the unity, no separation. You understand that last line of, you can't lose what you haven't lost. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a hard topic. Smile big, shine bright.